Newark Liberty International Airport is one of the most important gateways in the United States, nearly 50 million passengers a year, a major hub for transatlantic flying, and a direct link to one of the busiest rail corridors on the continent. Yet for 3 decades, the job of moving those passengers between terminals, parking lots, rental cars, and the national rail network has belonged to a single automated train that first opened in 1996. That train is now being replaced. The price tag is approximately $3.5 billion for a system about 2.5 miles long. That number sounds almost absurd until you understand what is actually being bought. This is not a fleet of new trains running on old track. It is a new elevated guideway, 3 new stations, 2 pedestrian connectors, new vehicles, an entirely new control and propulsion technology, a dedicated maintenance and control facility, and the demolition of everything that came before it. All of it built inside a working international airport that cannot close for a single day. And the deeper you go, the clearer it becomes that the AirTrain is not really the story. It is the spine of something much larger. This is Next Build. Newark Liberty sits about 15 miles from Manhattan in the dense industrial corridor between Newark and Elizabeth, New Jersey. It is one of 3 major airports operated by the Port Authority of New York and New Jersey, and for millions of travelers, it is the front door to the entire region. In 2023, the airport set a record, handling roughly 49 million passengers. The following year, it climbed again to nearly 50 million. For context, when the current AirTrain opened in 1996, Newark was serving around 30 million passengers a year. The traffic grew. Much of the infrastructure did not. A significant share of Newark's built environment dates to the 1970s, when Terminals B and C and the original Terminal A were constructed. Those buildings were designed for a different era of aviation. Lighter security requirements, far fewer passengers, and none of the retail, baggage, and processing demands of a modern international terminal. The roadway network grew outward in pieces over decades, and the result is one of the more confusing curbside layouts in American aviation. But there is one very visible exception. In January 2023, the Port Authority opened a new Terminal A, a full replacement of a 50-year-old building delivered as a modern, light-filled facility with a dramatically better passenger experience. It became the proof of concept. Terminal A showed what Newark could be, and it made the contrast with the rest of the airport impossible to ignore. Everything that has followed at Newark has essentially been an attempt to bring the rest of the airport up to that standard. The existing AirTrain Newark opened in 1996 as an on-airport people mover. Its original job was internal circulation, connecting the terminals with parking areas and airport facilities on a compact elevated loop. Then, in 2001, the system was extended to the Newark Liberty International Airport rail station, and its role changed completely. That station sits on the Northeast Corridor, the rail line linking Boston, New York, Philadelphia, and Washington. Suddenly, the AirTrain wasn't just an airport shuttle, it was the final connection between a transatlantic flight and NJ Transit and Amtrak services running up and down the eastern seaboard. For a traveler coming from Penn Station in Manhattan or from Trenton or Philadelphia, the sequence is simple. Train to the airport station, transfer to the AirTrain, ride to your terminal. That transfer is the only piece of the journey that belongs entirely to the airport, and it is the piece that everything else depends on. Before the pandemic, the system was carrying an average of about 33,000 passengers a day, roughly 12 million a year. And that is where the problem begins. The AirTrain is a first-generation automated people mover. It was engineered around the electronics, control logic, and vehicle technology available in the early 1990s. The Port Authority has been direct about its condition. The system requires extensive ongoing maintenance and repair. It cannot be meaningfully expanded or upgraded to newer technology, and its existing route physically constrains where the airport can grow. Meanwhile, demand is moving the other way. AirTrain ridership is forecast to grow by roughly 50% by 2040, beyond what the current system can absorb. There is a point in the life of any complex system where repair stops being the cheaper option. Automated transit tends to reach that point faster than most infrastructure because the concrete outlives the electronics by decades. The guideway, the elevated structure the trains run on, is civil engineering. Columns, beams, foundations. Built properly, it lasts a very long time. The parts that make it a train, though, age on a completely different clock. Train control, signaling, communications, power distribution, propulsion equipment, station interfaces, diagnostic software. These are components with finite service lives supplied by manufacturers who eventually stop making them. When a control platform reaches obsolescence, the choices narrow quickly. You can hunt for increasingly scarce spare parts. You can attempt to graft modern, software-based train control onto a legacy architecture that was never designed to accept it, or you can accept that the system has aged past the point where incremental investment returns anything meaningful. There is also a geometric problem that no amount of repair can solve. The 1996 alignment was drawn around the airport as it existed in the early 90s. That route now runs through territory the Port Authority wants to redevelop, and it does not serve the new Terminal A well. Passengers arriving at the existing station face a walk of roughly 15 minutes to reach it. You cannot fix an alignment with maintenance. You have to move it. The replacement program was originally authorized in 2019 with a budget of approximately $2.05 billion. The delivery strategy was a single all-in-one contract. One consortium would design, build, operate, and maintain the entire system, absorbing nearly all the risk. Then the market answered. Proposals came back in 2022 dramatically above expectations, shaped by pandemic-era cost escalation, disrupted supply chains, and a construction industry that had lost its appetite for swallowing mega-project risk whole. The Port Authority canceled the procurement and went back to the drawing board. What emerged was not a different project. It was a different way of building it, broken into separate packages, with system technology split from civil construction, and early works advanced ahead of the main effort to reduce uncertainty. In November 2024, the agency's board raised the program budget to $3.5 billion, adding roughly $1.5 billion to the earlier figure, citing the multi-year delay, the full reprocurement, and inflation. Here is what that number actually covers. Roughly 2.5 miles of elevated automated people, mover infrastructure, 3 new stations, 2 pedestrian connectors linking those stations to existing airport buildings, a new fleet of vehicles, the complete systems package, train control, electrical power, communications, and propulsion, a 70,000 square foot maintenance and control facility with an elevated storage yard, early works, demolition, utilities, and supporting infrastructure, and on top of all of it, program management, design, construction management, and inspection. $3.5 billion for 2.5 miles of track would be indefensible, but nobody is buying track. They are buying an entire transportation system, engineered and installed inside one of the busiest operating airports in the country. In December 2023, the Port Authority selected Doppelmayr to design, build, operate, and maintain the new people mover and its vehicles. The award included $570 million for design and construction, plus an estimated $385 million in present value terms for 2 decades of operations and maintenance. Doppelmayr is not a conventional railway builder. The company's specialty is cable-propelled transport, technology it has already deployed at the Oakland Airport connector and on systems in Las Vegas. The distinction matters. On a conventional commuter train, each vehicle carries its own motors and draws power as it moves. On a cable-propelled people mover, propulsion lives off-board. A continuously driven cable loop runs along the guideway, and vehicles grip and release it to move and stop. There is no driver, no cab, and far less machinery riding along with the passengers. For an airport, that architecture has real advantages. The system runs automatically, so service frequency is a scheduling decision rather than a staffing one. It runs on a dedicated, grade-separated guideway, so it is completely unaffected by traffic on the airport roadways. Station-to-station timing becomes predictable in a way that a curbside bus can never be. And with propulsion concentrated in fixed machinery rather than distributed across a fleet, maintenance is consolidated in one facility. The Port Authority's stated target is capacity for 50,000 passengers per day, up from the current system's 33,000. And unlike the 1996 system, the new alignment is designed to be extended. This is the part that explains the price. A constraint has governed this program from the beginning. The existing AirTrain has to keep running while its replacement is built around it. Passengers still need to reach their flights. The airport does not close. So consider what a construction crew is working around. aircraft movements on active taxiways and aprons, terminal roadways carrying continuous curbside traffic, parking structures in daily use, rental car facilities, buried in overhead utilities threaded through decades of expansion, some of it poorly documented, and a security environment where every worker is badged, every vehicle is escorted or screened, and equipment cannot simply be parked wherever it is convenient. Now add the vertical dimension. An elevated guideway means foundations, columns, and precast segments installed above and beside all of that, which means cranes, closures, and lifts that in many cases can only happen overnight or during narrow windows. Ground was broken in October 2025. In January 2026, the program entered its next major construction phase, building the guideway and track structure between the airport rail station and the P4 station. Doing that work required suspending AirTrain service on that segment on weekdays from 5 in the morning until 3 in the afternoon, with shuttle buses running every 4 to 5 minutes to carry passengers to the terminals, parking and rental car facilities in the meantime. Those outages pause for peak travel periods, the stretch between Memorial Day and Labor Day, and the holiday season. Further outages are planned across 2027 and 2028. That is the real cost driver, not the concrete, the choreography. Because the original single contract approach failed, the Port Authority rebuilt the program as a series of packages, each one procured separately, each one sized to attract genuine competition. The systems package went to Doppelmayr, the technology, the vehicles, the train control, and long-term operations. The civil work went out separately. In November 2024, the board awarded a $1.184 billion design-build contract to the joint venture of Tudor Perini and O&G Industries for the guideway and the 3 new stations, with Parsons as lead design subcontractor. That single contract is roughly a third of the entire program. In summer 2024, the engineering firm Stantec was selected to design the maintenance and control facility and the pedestrian connectors, and to handle the decommissioning of the existing AirTrain. And in 2025, the maintenance and control facility itself went to bid as its own construction package, the operations building and elevated maintenance yard, advertised in the range of roughly $100 to $110 million. Different specialists, different risk profiles, one system. It is a slower way to procure a mega project. After 2022, it was the only way this one was going to get built. In October 2024, the Port Authority unveiled the EWR Vision Plan, a long-term blueprint for Newark, developed with Arup and the architecture firm Skidmore, Owings, and Merrill. And this is where the AirTrain story reframes itself. The Vision Plan sets out a comprehensive reimagining of the airport, a new world-class international terminal replacing Terminal B, enhancements to Terminal C, potential further expansion of the new Terminal A simplified and rationalized roadway network, and a redesigned taxiway system intended to cut the delays Newark is notorious for. Longer-term airfield capacity improvements sit alongside it in the agency's 2026 to 2035 capital planning. Most of that is planning and design work, not construction. The distinction matters, and the renderings you have seen are exactly that, renderings. But notice the sequencing. The AirTrain is the one piece already under construction. Every terminal in that plan needs to connect to the rail station, to parking, to the rental car center, and to every other terminal. The people mover is the connective tissue that makes a redeveloped Newark function as a single airport rather than a collection of buildings, which is why its new route was drawn not around today's airport, but around the one the Port Authority intends to build, including direct access to Terminal A, eliminating that 15-minute walk. Terminal B opened in 1973. It was designed to handle roughly 6.8 million passengers a year. In 2025, it handled about 11.5 million. That gap is the argument for replacement in a single line. The Vision Plan calls for a new world-class international Terminal B built from the ground up, a facility intended to complement the completed Terminal A rather than patch around a 50-year-old building. The planning is genuinely underway. In late 2024, the board approved funding directed toward preliminary design for the new terminal and an assessment of the utility and infrastructure work it would require, and the AirTrain program has been designed with provisions for a future station serving that terminal, But this remains a long-term project. The new Terminal B is currently anticipated to open in the mid-2030s, which is why the Port Authority has also authorized a 3-year, $200 million program of near-term improvements to keep the existing building serviceable, the first $75 million phase of which was approved in 2026. Design work is not construction. What exists today is a plan, a budget line, and a train being built to meet it. Newark is not happening in isolation. The Port Authority has already delivered a complete reconstruction of LaGuardia, and it is overseeing a transformation at John F. Kennedy International that runs to roughly $19 billion. Newark now represents the third front in the modernization of the New York region's airport system. What makes Newark distinct is the order of operations. At Newark, the internal transportation network is being rebuilt first. Before most of the terminals it will eventually serve exist. That is an unusual bet. It is also the logical one because the AirTrain determines where terminals, roadways, and passenger flows can go. The Port Authority's 2026 to 2035 capital plan lists the AirTrain Newark replacement as opening in 2030. Picture the arrival then. A passenger steps off a Northeast Corridor train at the airport station and onto a new platform. Automated vehicles arrive frequently on a dedicated guideway, unaffected by whatever is happening on the roads below. The ride to Terminal A ends at the terminal itself, not 15 minutes away from it. Capacity for 50,000 passengers a day, with headroom for the growth already forecast. For most travelers, the experience will register as something simpler than all of that. The connection will just work, and the work will not be finished. The AirTrain enters service while Terminal B is still being designed, while roadway and taxiway plans continue to advance, while Terminal C improvements are still being scoped. The train opens into an airport that is still becoming something else. Reduced to a headline, this project is almost impossible to defend. $3.5 billion, 2.5 miles. But the headline describes a train, and this was never a train. It is a complete transportation system, guideway, stations, vehicles, propulsion, control, power, and maintenance, designed, built, and commissioned inside a major international airport that never stops operating, on a route drawn for terminals that have not been built yet, connecting a rail corridor that carries the northeastern United States. The old AirTrain was built to serve the airport that existed in 1996. The new one is being built to serve an airport that does not exist yet. That is the difference between maintaining infrastructure and committing to a future. Newark chose the harder one, laying the spine first and building the body around it. This is next build.